Hi, I'm Andrew Campbell, back with an all-new season of the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. Join me and trusted industry voices on Canadian-made stories from east to west, on everything from agronomy and farm business to social impact and more. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have a great guest and an awesome episode coming up. I have John Sachse joining us, and he is a performance mindset coach with Ranch Fit. John, how are you?
I am doing awesome today, Tracy, and I'm so blessed and honored to chat with you. I'm down here in the United States, down in the state of Kansas, probably a good ways south of you, but I am super excited to be taking the show international for you today, and just really being able to add some value to your audience and have a great conversation with you today.
I love it. I have been really looking forward to this conversation. Mindset is my jam, and I think there is so much gold and honestly, life-changing material here that we can share with farmers for health, happiness, and all around being the best farmer that we can be. So why don't we dive in? And before we get to the stuff we really want to talk about, can you share more about who you are? Because you have a really neat story, a really neat background, a really neat skill set. So can you tell our audience more about you?
Absolutely. Well, I am a man of many hats, quite a few. I have the privilege of my wife and I. We've got two boys, 5 and 2. We had the opportunity to move back to my family's farming and cattle operation several years ago, and it works perfect in our situation. My dad loves the crop side of the operation. I love the cattle. If there's multi-generational farmers and ranchers listening to this, you'll know that oftentimes you butt heads, and we've found a way to kind of do what we each like. And so my wife and I are blessed to kind of consider ourselves in the people business. We just happen to be selling cattle, and so we utilize cattle as a tool to help serve those around us. And so seed stock cattle operation, and we sell some bulls and heifers private treaty. I'm also an officer in the Kansas Army National Guard. It's been a blessing to have that opportunity to lead troops, those enlisted soldiers that I work with, and to fight for our country. I know that resonates with many of your listeners, Tracy, even though that you're in Canada. So National Guard officer, and then kind of have my hands in a few different things. Entrepreneur overall, do some mindset work with not just men, but I have kind of here the last probably year targeted men working on resiliency, kind of some stress management with men, and hey, where do you want to go in life? I'll help you get from kind of your point A to point B. So kind of some life coaching, some mindset work with men, and then do a little bit of consulting as well for some animal health companies. So those are a lot of different things that I listed off. None of them come in parallel with my true purpose and calling. Is I'm a follower of Christ. I have a firm faith in God, and I'm following Jesus. And so basically everything that I do has to funnel into serving those around me, serving others, adding value to others. So all of those things that I listed don't define me. What does define me is following God and serving others. And all those things I listed are just the tools that allow me to do that.
Beautiful. And you know what? That's no surprise. You could see in everything you do is service, mission-based, helping others. So that doesn't surprise me at all. I am excited to talk about your business, Ranch Fit. Can you tell us more about your company? You touched on it already, but I really want to get into the why. You do a lot of things, But I think there's an interesting story behind why you started Ranch Fit and the work that you do. So can you share more about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were talking before the podcast started. Um, Essentially, my wife and I had the opportunity to come back to my family's farming and cattle business. And that opportunity doesn't always happen for every family, as your audience knows. And so, after a lot of prayer and discussion, we decided to make the jump and come back as a young married couple. My wife is not originally from ag; she's a city girl from Kansas. Is not a huge urban populated state, but we do have a couple bigger cities, Kansas City and Wichita, and she's from Wichita. So didn't initially have a ag background. And that first probably 6 months that we came back, it was kind of a dark season of our lives, our marriage. We came back to my grandparents' old house that was uh, it had not been taken care of. There was a lot of issues with it that we were not aware of, that we found out once we moved in. And we calved mid-January to mid-March, and so we moved in, I think, in December. And we had a lot of calves being lost from snowstorms, and it was a very tough, kind of dark first 6 months being back at the farm. And as men, oftentimes when we see things not going well in our life, our business, our marriage, whatever it is, our job, oftentimes we try to take all of the weight, all of the stress of those things and put it on our shoulders, which is so not effective. But I felt like I was doing that. And then, being a younger married guy back in my home community, uh, the same in and um, it was hard to connect people. And so over the course of time, and then joining the military and just the community, that kind of the brotherhood that is formed being in the military and service of your country, I've kind of built upon the idea of building a community of like-minded individuals, especially men. We're all going through a lot of the same stresses and issues. And how can we come together and build strong men? And so the concept with Ranch Fit, it's not just for ag producers, farmers and ranchers. It's for men in general. But essentially, how can we come together as men and help each other get through this thing called life?
Excellent. So you touched on my next question, but I as an outside of your life, one, kudos to you guys and your marriage. If you survived that first dark winter, I think you guys are good.
Yeah, we should be.
Let's hope. You should be able to survive anything after that. And I was actually not laughing, but kind of nodding, because I imagine there's a lot of people in our audience that share the same story. I'm similar. I have farming family, grandparents, but I didn't grow up on a farm. And just visiting the farm when Anthony and I started farming, sorry, just sharing my story here a little bit that I've never shared on here. You think you know what farming is, right? Because I'd go out often to the farm and just hang out, but you're a kid. You're not really doing the work. You don't really have a good idea. So when we first started farming, man, does that really add a lot of stress to a marriage? It really does. I mean, like we said before we started talking, in farming, it's always something. With cattle, it's always something. And as husbands, wives, parents, we always have enough on the go. And then you add on the stressors of farm and outside jobs. Wow, kudos to you. So you touched on really your experiences and why that probably went hand in hand with you launching Ranch Fit. I am sitting here going, well, how neat is that? Because in the military, fitness training, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what you guys are doing to prep all the time and to become mentally and physically strong. So it's neat that you have that and you look and you go, hey, here's the problems in farming. Can't we just marry these? And I can use a little bit of this knowledge to help build something for the agriculture industry. Was that kind of how it happened for you?
Yeah, absolutely. The ranch fit program is and we can touch on it more later, but it's essentially some one-to-one coaching, and then there's an in-person fitness event. And that second portion, I knew I kind of wanted to coach and work with others, but the in-person physical fitness event, we here at the ranch, we offer a ruck march, and it's a ruck march is, for those who don't know, essentially is in combat you would basically have a heavy backpack. They can be 30, 50, sometimes 80, 100 pounds, and you would have everything in combat that you would need, boots, helmet, ammo, a long list of things. But we host a 5 and a 10K ruck march here on the ranch towards the end of December. And that idea came about from some National Guard training for officers that I had last fall. And essentially we were doing a lot of ruck marches, a lot of physically challenging things that I was getting to the point where I wanted to push myself. You and I, we were messaging before. We both love David Goggins. For those who don't know, look him up. He is incredible, very intense. But with that kind of thread going, or within that same vein, I wanted to push myself to see how far I could go. And so I did on the ruck marches, and it kind of, I while I was at the training, was toying around with the idea of implementing that on the ranch, and kind of twofold. Not only can we physically challenge people here at the ranch farm with something maybe a little more unique rather than just going to a gym. And I don't have any issues with gyms. I love them, but do something outside in nature, and then in addition utilize the farm and the ranch when, at the end of December you're done with harvest. It's essentially can be more of a quieter time, and so how can we best utilize our operation to serve others in a time that would be maybe slower, and to have some income coming in, but more importantly, how can we serve others with the land that we have while it's just sitting idle? How can we utilize it differently? So yeah, for sure, when I was in the military doing that training last summer and fall, I started to have the idea of kind of those two things. How can we utilize the land, and then how can we physically provide a outlet for people to come and do something physically challenging?
I love it. Okay. So when we started connecting about this episode, I was really excited about what you were doing. And I'm just going to rant a little bit here, and I'm sure we have a similar view on it. In farming, in the military, both of those professions are very stressful, but let's go to farming here for our audience. Just when we think it's calm, something else comes up. Just when we think it's going to be a good year, something goes crazy. Farming is stressful. Of course, we deal with so many things, probably most things that are out of our control. So that often leads to mental health concerns, right? And my beef, and maybe where you have the military and you marry that with farming and you've brought ranch fit, to me, I have an entrepreneurial background, and I look at that world, and in there is everybody mindset training is everything. Mindset is life. And one of my biggest beefs is that important information. We're not taught that in school. We're not taught the importance of our mind, that our thoughts dictate our reality. And most people hear this and their mind will still be blown. These concepts and proactively working on your mindset, because that determines your results. So when I seen what you were doing, I'm like, excellent. And well, it might seem a little bit weird to farmers. It's like, well, why do I need to work on my mindset? Like, I just farm and I do my stuff. Why? Here's another one, and I've heard it from farmers I know. Why do I need to exercise? I work physically all day. So to me, getting ahead of mental health issues, I've done episodes with organizations that are spreading awareness, sharing information, how to handle some stuff like that, how to reach out to people if you're concerned about their mental health. So I'm going to call that up here and down here, right? Like, they're spreading awareness. Amazing. Leaps and bounds in the conversation. And then over here, if you have a concern, how to spot it. If the neighbor seems off, how to talk to them. So fantastic. But I'm thinking of this. There is a lot here in the middle that we can do. And mindset and physical is huge. So I don't know if you want to touch on that. I'm just kind of riffing a little bit, going off cuff here, and maybe kind of sharing why I wanted you on and where I'm going with the show is, you know what? We want a good farm. We need to be mentally healthy. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't remember how you said it, but essentially our emotions, the things that we're feeling, drive our thoughts that we have in our day. And I've heard the number. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of thoughts that each of us have a day. I mean, even down to, where's my cup, and all the things. And so our emotions drive our thoughts, and the thoughts then drive our actions, or the things that we do. And so there's a negative connotation, especially with men in agriculture and probably in general, but especially the military, where people sigh. They're like, oh, mental health. Well, mental health is essentially just brain health. And our brain is a muscle just like anything else, that if you're not actively working on a consistent, even daily basis, you're not going to have the ability to reframe the situations that you face. One thing that I love to work with people on, and I do this daily. Even last night before we got on the call, we had cattle out, and my wife was helping me as it was dark. We had about 30 head out, and it was very stressful, but my wife and I kind of helped each other reframe the situation. And, hey, this wasn't a failure, but this was an opportunity to learn from. So when you're not working mentally on yourself each and every day on a consistent basis, you're not able to think of things with a different lens or different perspective. And yeah, I mean, if you can on a daily basis change your emotions, your reactions to things, that's game changing. So one thing I love with physical fitness, I get so much more, I'd say, mental gains from, I'm an avid runner. I love running. I get more mental gain than physical gain from running, whether it's a marathon, a half marathon, even a 10-minute run, whatever it is. The confidence that I gain from that then dictates the emotions, the feelings that I'm having, which then I have more positive thoughts of myself because of the confidence gained. And then those thoughts drive my actions or reactions. And then you're just a better, probably a better spouse, a better wife, whatever it is, parent, business owner, when you're able to kind of shift how you see problems and reframe them. And it's, again, our emotions drive our thoughts, which drive our actions. And that's something that anybody needs to be consistently working on.
Amen. And it's funny, we're not taught this. Anyways, I can
Yeah. No,
I can do a whole rant about that, but it's so important. Okay, John, I'm going to share something with you. In past seasons, I tend to stay behind the camera and ask the questions and keep my personal stuff to myself, but I think I want to share this, and it also helps our audience understand the direction I'm going with episodes going forward. Just because of course I'm show host, so where I'm at in life tends to flavor the show. So I'm very fortunate that I somehow caught on to mindset fairly young. Actually, The Secret. If people want to laugh, go ahead. But that type of content changed my life, allowed me to build this business. So I'm very fortunate that I have been and felt fairly unstoppable in life. Okay. I'm 41 now, call it for 37 years. I was on my mindset, building. And here's something that happened to me, very, very personal. The pandemic hit. And I was very fortunate. Of course, I own my own company. It's agriculture. Things stayed strong and we have the farm. My business wasn't closed. I was fairly lucky. But the sheer amount of stress and unknown, I'm not sure how bad it was in Kansas, but it was pretty special up here in Canada, everything that happened. The sheer amount of unknown and stress, and the fact that all of a sudden my whole life ground to a halt, no business travel, no meetings, and I started working from home with not a lot of socialization. I went from feeling unstoppable to stopped for the first time in my life. And I took for granted my mindset and just my habit. And all of a sudden, all that fear, and I'm sure many people can relate, everything just piled on me. And then I started and I allowed myself, without realizing, to get in a negative mindset, a fear-based mindset. And honestly, it has taken me quite some time. I mean, it's been over for a while now. And personally, it's taken me a while to climb out and start retraining my brain. And man, did that rock my world, because my mindset and my ability to be positive and think positive drives the results of this company. And I was just stopped. So there's a little more backstory. When you reached out about mindset, I'm like, let's do it. Because this, not only for me, but this conversation just should be every day. Kitchen table
Absolutely.
talk. So anyways, I'm sorry, I normally don't go into personal stuff, but that's just kind of why I'm so very fired up about this right now.
And I love that as you were talking about just having a kind of a negative thought process on a consistent basis. I'm fortunate enough to be so I'm in the National Guard. It's a some weeks it's part-time, others it feels more full-time, but I am what's called the United States Army has what's called resiliency training. And then if you're in the Guard, each unit would have a trainer, and I'm my unit's trainer. So I talk about mindset, resiliency, how to overcome things. And one thing when I was going through to be trained as the trainer that they talked about is kind of a negative thought loop. And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with the emotions. You can downward spiral pretty quick, or there's different, catastrophizing a situation where something negative is given to you that's probably really not all that bad, but you make it way worse than it is. And there's different kind of types or genres of that negative downward spiral that you mentioned. But if we can be working on ourselves consistently and stop our emotions downward spiraling, then our thought process is going to be different. It'll be more positive, and then that affects our reactions and perspective and stuff. So I like that thank you for sharing that, because that's important as well.
Oh, I'm not a sharing personal stuff.
Yeah.
I feel good about it. I think it's important. I mean, these kind of conversations, I've seen it happen, and I'm working on vulnerability. I like to say I'm kind of like a man. I'm not like your typical girl that likes the girl talk and let's talk about emotions. It's like, get to work, right?
Yep.
I say I
Yep.
work like a man, very stereotypical. Don't send me hate mail, guys. Don't send John hate mail about this. So yeah, I know. And why I'm going there, maybe why I shared it, jumping right over to the farm, we make the best decisions we can with the information we have at the moment in time on the farm. So grain farmers put whatever commodity, whatever seed into the ground, looking at what the prices should be. We don't always know unless they lock it in, etc. But you make this decision, and then come fall, the floor's dropped out on that commodity. And you made the best decision here, and you're feeling good, and you couldn't have made a different decision. But come fall, you go, what did I do? What a disaster. And it automatically becomes this huge mistake. And I notice the more you farm, the more you're making decisions, the longer you're going. If we're not working on our mindset, to me, it seems like stackable regrets, stackable
Yep.
mistakes. And even with our farming and stuff that's happened when we started farming, it was like, oh yeah, you didn't have any hard knocks. You're innocent, you're enthusiastic. And then something happens. It's like, oh, okay, still fairly young, still enthusiastic, let's go to town. But then and it might not even be noticeable. I mean, maybe we don't pay attention, but it's like, oh, that mistake and that drought and that selling at the wrong time. And it stacks and it stacks. So do you want to speak to the importance? And I'm going to share I'm going to loop something I also wanted to add, John. Sorry. I'm probably more talkative in this episode than I've ever been, because this is just my jam. That's how passionate I am about mindset. So forgive me, John. Okay. Forgive me.
Nope.
So I want you to talk about the importance of mindset and building resiliency and shrugging that off. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And then I want to share a line from your website, and I'll share that separately. I want you to touch on that first.
Yeah, absolutely. And no need to apologize. I love the conversation back and forth. This has been fun so far.
Oh,
We could go for a couple hours, I think.
I think
This, I don't know. I mean, it's a well-known thing, but they preach it very hard in the military, but control the controllables. And so it's easier said than done at times, but don't worry about the things that you can't control. If the market's doing X, Y, and Z, it is out of your hands. I know you mentioned that I think there's some pretty dry weather where you're at. We can't seem to catch rain, and it's frustrating because we're in an area that gets pretty good rainfall every year, and we've just the rain has just turned off. And so the root systems in the ground aren't used to growing deeper because they don't typically need to. And so things are incredibly dry here. But all of that is out of our control. Just focus on the things that you have the ability to change or have an effect or an impact on, and move on from there. I mean, in combat, if you're in the military or whatever it is, you can't control what the enemy's doing, and you can just make sure that you're prepared as well as you can on your end, Like you said, you have the most make the best informed decision with the most accurate information you have at the time, and move on from there. Another thing I wanted to kind of just highlight is, and this goes into the resiliency piece, an important component within resiliency to me is goal setting, knowing your why, starting with the end state, the end goal in mind, and working your way back. And I think I fall victim to this frequently, but I think oftentimes as farmers and ranchers, we have a short term mindset that those negative things that happen, like bad markets, or you sold 100 steers and the market wasn't great that week, those are short term focused issues. So if we can begin to work on our business and not in the business, and what I mean by that is, when you're in the business, you're feeding the cows, you're planting the corn. Those are things that, relatively speaking, are they take a short amount of time. And yes, those are critical to our operations, but take some time I would encourage others to take time to try to find ways to delegate some of those tasks out, so you can begin to work on the business and kind of goal set and think long term with the business. And it doesn't have to be a week. I mean, it could be for a day or a half a day or even a few hours here and there. Work on the business and not in the business. And when you can work on the business, you're stopping, you're pausing, you're reflecting, you're seeing where you're at, and you know what the end goal is in mind. You have a kind of a 2, 3, 5, 10 years. In 10 years, this is what I want the operation to look like. And when you have a longer term vision, and you've actually thought about it, you've thought about the obstacles, the vision of what you want it to physically look like, then those shorter term things, the negative things that might pop up here and there, don't seem to impact you as much. They still do, but they're bigger, or they're smaller fish to fry, I guess, if you're focused more on the long term.
I love it. Something you said there just hit me. When the pandemic was going on, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate, because it was scary, different, just stuff we haven't dealt with before. I lost my vision and my goal setting. I've always worked towards something, but I got ground to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
Things were uncertain, and I got disconnected, stopped working on that business, stopped working on my mindset practices. And now I'm looping up and working on that again. So, like I said, if you wonder why I'm extra fired up about mindset, I loved it and I knew how important it was, but I took it for granted because it was my baseline. I listened to my positive conditioning stuff every morning. Then I fell out of those practices, spiraled in my mindset, and now here, digging myself out, getting reconnected, I'm looking back and going, wow, you're just not that same person. You're not positive. You just look at that and you go, oh, I get it. I get it. How much mindset dictates where you're at in your outlook on life. And I want to grab a line I took from your website, because this leads right into it. Stress and burden can weigh us down and separate us from who we are called to be. And when I am reflecting on what I just went through, I'm like, wow, did that ever disconnect me from who I'm meant to be? So do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that as well. A little on your story. Yeah, so I guess what I mean by that, in a deeper sense of, you see what it says, but at a deeper level, I think when we're carrying, especially as a guy, we carry so much of the weight of the world on our shoulders, which we don't need to and aren't meant or supposed to. But when we do that, and I do it too, we're restricting our movement. And when we do that, the actions or the risks that we might take each day are restricted, and we're not going to be living up to our full potential that God has called us to be. At one kind of analogy or story or whatever that I'd use for this would be, in the United States, football is huge here. It would relate to hockey as well, I'm sure, or soccer or basketball. But how many times have we watched a game, our favorite team, they're playing well almost the entire game, and then towards the end of the game, and they're winning, and towards the end of the game, they think they've got the game in the bag. They're ahead. They've been playing awesome. The other team hasn't been, and so they let off the gas. Essentially, they quit playing as hard as they could have played. On offense, they close the playbook. They start, playing calling calls that are bland or vanilla, and they start to lose the traction that they had. And on defense in football, you quit blitzing, you quit being aggressive, you take the pressure off the quarterback or the receivers, and you're essentially allowing that other team with a couple really good plays to get back in the game. And how often is it that we see that you're essentially handcuffing yourself and restricting yourself? And so I go back to, if you're carrying stress, burden, weight on your shoulders, you're restricting yourself, and kind of holding yourself back from where you could essentially be, more or less.
Ooh, that was powerful. Perfect analogy too. And I think that hit home for me like I said, as I come out, I'm like, I was not the person I should have been, needed to be, want to be. A lot of missed opportunity there. And I give myself grace, because you need to go through what you need to go through, and no use raking yourself over the coals. But that line really just punctuates the importance of being mentally strong so that you can be the best person, right? Just like you said, that's so perfect. I love it.
I don't want to ever get to the end of my life, and when I get to heaven, I want who I ended up being to be as close as to who I was called to be, as close as possible. I don't want to have that regret of, man, I could have done X, Y, and Z. I want who I ended up being to be just about as identical as it can be to who you were called to be.
I love it. That's beautiful. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit. We've chatted a little bit about physical, but a lot about mindset here. I just want you to touch on physical. We're not taught, in my opinion, enough about the importance of physical activity and the gains. Like you said, it's not just for your body, it's really for your mind. Can you speak to that farmer that says, good gracious, I am walking all day long, I'm in and out of tractors, I'm carrying pails, I'm lifting seed bags, I don't need to exercise. I'm not some city boy that goes to the office. Can you touch on that? Because I think physical fitness is a big area of winning that can help prevent a lot of mental health concerns, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say it again, that I get so much more mental gain from running or lifting, whatever it is that I'm doing, or rucking for the military. I ruck on my own as well from time to time, but I get it too. We farm and ranch as well, and there's even today, I have not run yet, but I've told myself that it's going to happen. I don't have an excuse to not do it. It's just my day hasn't aligned yet for that to happen. But When you can push yourself physically past beyond what you thought was capable, the confidence, the clarity, absolutely the confidence for sure that you gain flows into all other areas of your life. So last fall, we had a 12-mile ruck march with, I think it was 45 or 50 pounds of weight on our back, and kind of on the David Goggins theme.
Yeah.
I had been training for a marathon at the time. I had very, very high level of endurance at that point, and I wanted to essentially, typically a ruck is just a fast-paced walk. You certainly don't run it, but I told myself I'm going to push myself and I'm going to jog the entire 12 miles. And I made the promise to myself that I would do that. And it was early in the morning. I think we started at 4 a.m, and it typically would take, a couple hours to do that, even at a faster pace. And, it's dark out. You've got 50 pounds of weight on your back. My shoulders started to kill me probably 4 or 5 miles in, and especially if your pack is not, uh, if you don't have things packed in a certain way, it can make it even worse on your shoulders. But my back started hurting, and I just kept pushing, and I kept visualizing while I was jogging. I kept visualizing the finish line, being done with the 12 miles, knowing that I jogged the entire thing, even out there in the pitch black on my own. I just kept visualizing what it would feel like to have the relief and the release off my shoulders, my back, to have that pack come off at the finish line. And a few hours later, I finished. The sun was starting to come up, and it was just as I had visualized time and time again, that when I wanted to stop, and just the power that I had knowing I kept the promise to myself while I was rucking. I wanted to stop. I don't know how many times. I mean, even at mile 4, I was kind of struggling, and the power, the clarity, the confidence that I gained from keeping that promise to myself through pushing myself, to that point. I had never done anything so physically demanding, to ruck with weight on your back and to jog the entire thing, with up and down, hills and stuff, through the trees. The confidence that I gained from that day, I'm still carrying that with me today, because I know that if you literally put your mind to something, there's nothing that your mind is so much more powerful than we give it credit for. And so when you can begin to dig deep and unlock some of that stuff, man, the confidence just flows into all areas of yourself. And so going back to your initial question, yeah, there's physically demanding things on the farm and ranch, but if we're not actually carving out time it doesn't even have to be, we're training for a half marathon. It doesn't have to be something like that. It can be, hey, for 5 days a week, I'm going to walk 20 minutes a day, but it's a carved out time. Again, doesn't have to be intense, but what fits your schedule. You're carving out time to work on you. And when you can work on yourself physically, you have the mental clarity to then make better informed decisions. And oftentimes, I am similar to you. I'm a type A personality. I am a doer.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not doing something, I feel anxious and nervous. If I just have to sit, is really hard for me. But if you can do a 20-minute walk in the morning before you get started planing beans for the day, for instance, you can start to think about the obstacles, the roadblocks that you might face that day. And so it allows you to kind of visualize what those obstacles and roadblocks might be. And it just allows you to be a better, more efficient manager of your operation.
Well said. That was perfect. Love it, love it, love it. It's just such a ripple effect, right?
Hmm.
Tell me this. I imagine when you exercise, you're a better, happier person, a better
Hmm. Yep.
officer, a better farmer, a better husband, a better dad, et cetera, right? It's just a ripple effect.
Yeah. And we haven't even, I mean, we haven't even talked about the, at a cellular science level, what that does to our bodies and stuff. I mean, we're just kind of touching on the surface stuff, but it is so powerful. And our brains are malleable, and that's so cool to know that what we're inputting into our mind and our bodies, affects us, and the things that we're learning today are impacting tomorrow. And our brain is a sponge that's constantly kind of molding and forming to how we are as people.
Ooh, I love it. I'm sensing part 2, ranch fit brain science. If you're willing, there might be a part 2 here. You're right. We could talk for hours on this. Okay. So I'm gonna flip the order here. I'm gonna
Yep.
get you to do a call out about your programs and services, but let's wait on that. I want that to be the final thing and where people can go to find out more. But I'm gonna do a quick lightning round of questions to get to know you. You shared a lot personally, but just to get to know you a little bit differently than the questions about what we're talking about. So what's something that you are really fired up about? And it can be good or bad, either personally or professionally.
Hmm. I think going back to uh, we've talked a little bit about the word resiliency. And one thing with the soldiers at my unit that I talk to them about is this fires me up that um, you or I were focusing on a kind of a growth mindset. That doesn't make us any more talented than the next person. And me as a mindset coach, I wasn't born with more mindset cells, inside of me. And so the cool thing to me is that no matter where you are in life, if you're struggling or if you're doing well or you're somewhere in between, which that probably captures your audience, um, we all have the ability to develop a growth mindset, a resilient mindset by what we're feeding our minds, our bodies. And so no matter if you're doing great or struggling or somewhere in between, we already have everything inside of us that we need. We just have, sometimes it takes a mentor or a guide or a coach to help us unlock that toolbox, but we already have everything that we need inside of us already to succeed. And it's awesome when I get to sit down with a coaching client or a soldier at my unit who needs some advice and some mentoring. uh, I can ask questions in a way that they basically solve their own problems. I don't do it for them. I just ask things in a way that allows them to view things from a different perspective. So that's awesome for me. That uh, one person's not better than the other. We have everything we need inside of us, and it just, if you want it bad enough, if you want to be resilient enough, if you want to overcome the obstacles in your life, if you want it bad enough, uh, you've got everything inside of you that you need to accomplish that.
Ooh, I think I've loved everything you've said, but I think those are the most powerful words. Literally, those words can breathe life into a weary soul. So thank you for sharing that. That was great. Okay, a book or video that has changed your life.
Hmm. The first thing that comes to mind, and this is interesting, I would say a book because I didn't grow up enjoying reading, but now that I've gotten into uh, personal kind of a growth mindset, I have loved reading. And actually I've kind of flipped. We don't watch a ton of shows anymore, my wife and I, and we consistently read every day. But for sure, hands down, one book that's been a game changer for me is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. He's from the US, but he's had an international reach. It has been game changing with how I interact with people, how I communicate, how I market our bulls or heifers, or when I visit with somebody about coaching, whether it's goal setting or whatever issue they might be having. Basically, the premise of the book, if you haven't heard of it, is you have to start with your why, and then everything that you do feeds into that. And so essentially the why is those things at a core, deeper level that drive you, the beliefs that you have in this world, the perspective you bring. That's your why. So for me, I'm a follower of Jesus, and I feel like we were all meant to be on this earth to help each other. And I wake up each day saying a prayer, hey, how can I best serve you, add value to those around me, those I interact with, how can I help them? And I just happen to be an officer in the National Guard, sell cattle, work with individuals on their mindset. Those are the tools in which that I can serve. But until I read that book, you just think of the what, and the what is the, farmer and rancher, the mindset coach. Those are the what's. The what's and the how's to the why. And I'd never really thought at a deeper level, what is it that I'm truly doing here? Well, it's serving others. And so it kind of is a litmus test for me that if I don't do it, if what I'm doing doesn't serve the why, if you will.
Interesting. I've known about that book forever. It just hasn't hit my radar in the right way. I believe books come to you when you need them. And if they come to you before that, I think they sit until it's time. Yep. So I'm thinking you're delivering a message for me, because that's quite timely. Thank you. Okay. What is the best advice you've ever received?
I think so in the military, this is just one thing. I am an everyday learner, so if you ask me this tomorrow, it might change, but in the military, they're huge on don't present a problem to me unless you have a solution. And that's huge, because don't just come to me with this short-term or long-term problem, but they want you to be able to, especially as an officer, think longer term on things, and the actions that you have right now, what's the second and third order of effects of if you commit to this, how's it gonna affect tomorrow, or these actions? And so kind of some longer term thinking. And it's just always resonated with me, because oftentimes people just want to complain about a problem. Well, that doesn't help anybody. But think through what a solution is, and you can begin to kind of think longer term and think about how my actions today are affecting tomorrow. And so, yeah, for sure, it shifts from kind of a shorter term, here's the problem, to you're thinking of the problem from a deeper angle, I guess, if you will.
That's good. And very relevant to farming too, because the nows are always so urgent, and so many of them, right? Sometimes it can be harder to get back out. Okay. The last question. You are 99 years old and you are stuck on an island. You just have this small piece of paper and you don't know if you're going to make it off the island. So you want to share some hopefully not final, hopefully you'll get rescued, but you're concerned it's your final words, okay? What would you put on that paper as advice?
Just to anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll get passed down to your kids and grandkids, your friends. You're sitting there, you're going, man, if I could tell somebody something about life, I don't have a lot of words, don't have a lot of paper. What would it be?
I love that question. And I would go back to I won't just talk about this. I'll give you more than going back just to the why book, but I would encourage my younger self or anybody, if I was 99, talking to somebody younger and trying to give them a piece of my wisdom that I've learned, it would be to go back and make sure that you're thinking of your why and spend time in that. There is a tremendous, we could have a whole episode on visualization, but I am a huge proponent of visualization, if I could say it right. If you can visualize the end goal, the end state, whatever it is that you're striving for, or whatever your dream is, if you can visualize it, there is so much power in that. There's research that, and going back to our mind being malleable, there's research that suggests that our mind does not know the difference between what we've actually done and what we have just thought about repeatedly. And so if you can begin to tap into what it is that you really want in life, and then to visualize what that looks like at a very descriptive level, your mind begins to then, that's the subconscious, then our minds begin to gravitate towards the actions that lead us there. So identify the end state that you want in life, the why, what is it that you're striving for, and spend time, and a lot of good time on a consistent basis, visualizing and feeling what that end goal, that end state looks like. Because at a subconscious level, that's what we're thinking about. But then, whether you're closing your eyes and visualizing or meditating, whatever it is, and you come back to being more present, our actions will begin to notice things that we can take advantage of, and we begin to gravitate towards the actions needed to get us to that end state.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Don't want the conversation to end, but I think we need to. Oh, John, when we started chatting, I'm like, this is going to be a powerful episode. I just had that feeling in my gut. So thank you so much. This is game-changing stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time. I loved it. You guys in the audience, if you loved this content as much as I did, we're going to give John a space right now to call out. Where can people find more information about your online, in-person programs that you offer? Do a call out and then we'll wrap her up, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. If you go to goranchfit.org, you can find information on our upcoming end of the year ruck march. It's a 5K and 10K option. Also, kind of thinking through what it looks like to do a kind of a men's brotherhood retreat the day before, and that would feed into the ruck. But we would talk about faith, the struggles that we're going through, where we are as men, and then do something physically challenging to kind of break us down, and then we'll build you back up. And I'm kind of still brainstorming what that looks like, but you can find information on the website about that. I also offer one-to-one transformational coaching, and you can book a discovery call on that website, and there's a link to my Instagram on there as well. But I would be honored to connect with you.
Wonderful. John, this conversation has been a blessing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, John. It was my honor to have you on the show. You guys in the audience, I hope you love this conversation as much as I did. Honestly, the stuff talked about in here has the power to just transform your life. So like it, share it, get it out there, connect with John, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, guys.